The Vampire King had not smiled in 300 years, not since the night his beloved queen had been slain by hunters who set their entire estate ablaze while she slept. Quintus Rothwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse overlooking the glittering city below, his white hair catching the moonlight like spun silver. His pale hand rested against the glass, fingers splayed as he watched the mortals scurrying about their brief lives far beneath him. Behind him, in the sprawling luxury of his modern castle, his son sat surrounded by tutors and servants and every possible comfort, yet the boy never laughed, never truly smiled. At only 8 years old, little Viktor had learned grief before he learned joy, and Quintus blamed himself for that every single night of their immortal existence. "Your Majesty," came the voice of his advisor Cassius from the doorway. "The council is assembled." Quintus didn't turn. "Tell them I'll address their concerns when I deem it necessary." "Sire, they grow restless. The neutral territories need governance. The bloodhouses are feuding again. They need your leadership." "They need nothing from me but my name and my power." Quintus's voice was cold, empty. "I have given them both. That should suffice." Cassius retreated without another word, knowing better than to press. Everyone knew better than to press the king who had closed his heart the night his queen died. Quintus ruled with absolute authority and perfect coldness, making decisions that kept their vampire society functioning in the modern world, hidden among humans who remained blissfully ignorant of the ancient predators living in their midst. But he ruled without passion, without warmth, without anything resembling the fierce, loving man he had once been. Behind him, footsteps approached with a lighter tread. "Viktor." "Father," the boy said softly, "I'm hungry." Quintus finally turned, looking down at his son. Viktor had inherited his mother's eyes, dark and expressive, though they rarely showed anything but solemnity now. The boy's white hair was perfectly combed, his small suit impeccable. He looked like a miniature nobleman from another century, which was precisely what he was. "The servants will bring you sustenance," Quintus said. "I don't want it from them. I want to go out, like you used to take me, before." Before Viktor's mother had died trying to save him from the fire, before Quintus had slaughtered every hunter who had participated in the attack, painting the streets red with their blood, before the king had retreated into this gilded cage of glass and steel and declared he would never feel anything again. "It isn't safe," Quintus said automatically. "You always say that, but you're the strongest vampire in the world. Who could hurt us when I'm with you?" The logic was sound, and coming from an 8-year-old, it was particularly damning. Quintus studied his son's face, seeing the desperate hope there, the yearning for something beyond these walls. Viktor was a child. Immortal, yes, but still a child who needed more than blood and books and bodyguards. "Very well," Quintus heard himself say. "Get your coat." Viktor's eyes widened with surprise, then something that almost resembled excitement. He ran off to obey, and Quintus wondered if he was making a mistake. But what was immortality if they spent it cowering in fear? He had avenged his wife. The hunters who killed her were dead. And Viktor deserved better than to grow up in a tomb of his father's grief. 20 minutes later, they walked the city streets together. Quintus had chosen a quieter neighborhood, away from the pulsing nightlife where his kind often hunted. He kept Viktor close, one hand on his son's shoulder, his supernatural senses alert to every heartbeat, every scent, every potential threat within 100 yards. "Where are we going?" Viktor asked, looking up at him. "Wherever you wish." Viktor considered this with the gravity of someone much older. "I'd like to see where normal people eat, human children with their parents." The request caught Quintus off guard. "Why?" "I want to remember what it's like, before I forget completely." The words struck deep. Viktor had been turned when he was 6, after the fire had burned him so badly that the only way to save his life had been to give him immortal blood. He would be 8 years old forever, but his memories of human childhood were already fading, becoming dreamlike and distant. "There," Quintus said, gesturing to a small restaurant with warm yellow lights glowing from its windows. Through the glass, they could see families sitting at tables, children laughing, parents smiling. It was called Honey's Diner, an unpretentious establishment that looked like it had been there for decades. "Can we go inside?" Viktor asked. "We don't eat their food." But we can pretend, please, Father. Quintus looked down at his son's upturned face and felt something crack in the ice around his heart. For a little while, they entered, and immediately a woman's voice called out, "Sit anywhere you like. I'll be right with you." The interior was cozy and worn, with red leather booths and black and white checkered floors. Quintus guided Viktor to a corner booth where he could keep his back to the wall and watch all entrances, old habits from centuries of survival. Viktor slid into the seat across from him, looking around with wide eyes. A little human girl at a nearby table was eating pancakes shaped like mice, complete with whipped cream ears and chocolate chip eyes. She giggled when syrup dripped down her chin, and her mother gently wiped it away. Quintus watched his son watch them and felt the weight of everything he had stolen from Viktor by turning him. The boy would never grow up, never have children of his own, never experience the natural cycle of human life. But he would exist. He would endure. And that had seemed like enough in the moment when Quintus had held his dying son and made the choice to save him the only way he could. "Hi there." The voice was bright, warm, and entirely unexpected. "Welcome to Honey's. I'm Harper, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Quintus looked up and felt time stop. The waitress was young, mid-20s perhaps, with honey-colored hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had flour on her cheek and what looked like coffee stains on her apron, but her smile was genuine and reached all the way to her green eyes. Those eyes met his for a moment, and he saw her do a double take, clearly startled by his appearance. Most humans had that reaction the first time they really looked at a vampire, some primal part of their brain recognizing the predator even if they couldn't consciously understand what they were seeing. But then she looked at Viktor, and her expression softened into something unbearably gentle. "And who is this handsome gentleman?" she asked, pulling out her order pad. Viktor stared at her, momentarily speechless. Quintus realized with a start that his son was experiencing the same strange moment he was, this sense of being seen rather than simply observed. "I'm Viktor," the boy finally said. "That's my father, Quintus." "Quintus," Harper repeated, testing the name. "That's beautiful. I've never heard it before." "It's quite old," Quintus said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Harper's smile turned a bit mischievous. "Old-fashioned, you mean?" "I like it. Way better than all the Aidens and Jacksons running around these days." She turned her attention back to Viktor. "So, Viktor, what can I get for you? We make a mean hot chocolate and the cookies just came out of the oven." "We don't actually eat," Viktor said with the blunt honesty of a child. "We just came to watch." Harper blinked, clearly confused, and Quintus quickly intervened. "He means we already ate. But we'll take coffee, too." "You let him drink coffee?" Harper asked, raising an eyebrow. "Brave parenting choice." "He's more mature than he appears," Quintus said dryly. "I can see that," Harper scribbled on her pad. "2 coffees coming up. But I'm also bringing some cookies because those look like cookie-worthy faces if I've ever seen any." She walked away before Quintus could protest, and Viktor immediately leaned forward. "She's nice," he whispered, "and she smells different." Quintus had noticed most humans smelled like prey to vampires, their blood calling like a siren song. But this woman smelled like vanilla and cinnamon and something else, something that made him want to breathe deeper, to move closer, to understand what made her different from the countless mortals he had encountered over his long existence. "Don't stare," Quintus told his son, even as he found his own gaze tracking Harper's movements through the diner. She moved with easy confidence, refilling coffee for an elderly couple, laughing at something a trucker at the counter said, ruffling a little boy's hair as she passed. Everyone seemed to light up when she approached, as if she carried sunlight with her. Sunlight, the thing that would kill him if he ever touched it. She returned with their coffee and a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies that made Viktor's eyes widen. "On the house," she said, setting them down. "You both look like you could use something sweet." "We look that bad?" Quintus asked before he could stop himself. Harper tilted her head, studying them with unexpected perceptiveness. "You look sad," she said simply. "Both of you. Like you've forgotten how to be anything else." The observation was so accurate it was almost painful. Quintus had no response, no quick deflection. He simply stared at this strange, bold waitress who had known them for 5 minutes and already seen through to the core of their existence. "Sorry," Harper said, her cheeks flushing. "I have a bad habit of saying exactly what I'm thinking. My boss is always telling me I'm going to offend someone someday." "You haven't offended me," Viktor said quietly. "You're right." Harper's expression softened again, and she crouched down beside the booth so she was at eye level with the boy. "You know what I do when I'm sad?" she asked. "What?" "I make cookies. Big, messy, chocolate chip-loaded cookies. And then I eat them while watching terrible reality TV shows. Works every time." Viktor actually smiled, just a little. "We can't eat cookies. Food allergies?" "Something like that," Quintus said. "That's rough, kid," Harper said to Viktor with genuine sympathy. "But there's got to be something that makes you happy. What do you like to do?" Viktor thought about this seriously. "I like stories about adventures and heroes and people who do brave things." "Yeah? Me too. I'm reading this amazing book right now about a girl who discovers she can talk to ghosts, and she has to solve her own murder from 100 years ago. It's wild." "That sounds wonderful," Viktor said, leaning forward with actual interest in his voice. "What's it called?" As Harper told him about the book, describing the plot with animated hand gestures and obvious enthusiasm, Quintus watched his son's face transform. Viktor was engaged, excited, asking questions and offering his own opinions on what the main character should do next. He looked alive in a way he hadn't since before his mother died. And when Harper made a joke about the ghost's terrible timing during a romantic scene, Viktor laughed. Actually laughed, a bright sound of pure joy that Quintus hadn't heard in so long he'd almost forgotten what it sounded like. The sound hit him like a physical blow. His son was laughing. His beautiful, serious, grief-stricken son was laughing at something a human waitress had said in a cheap diner at 11 o'clock on a random Tuesday night. Harper looked delighted by Viktor's reaction, and she stood up with a grin. "You've got a great laugh, kid. Don't lose it." "I'll try not to," Viktor said, still smiling. "Let me know if you need anything else," Harper said, and then she was off again, attending to her other customers with the same warmth and attention she'd shown them. Quintus realized he was smiling. Actually smiling. The muscles in his face felt strange, unfamiliar, but the expression was genuine. He was smiling because his son was happy, and for the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something other than grief and rage and cold emptiness. He felt hope. They stayed far longer than necessary, nursing their coffee while Viktor ate cookies and watched the human families around them. Harper checked on them periodically, each time somehow managing to draw another smile or laugh from Viktor with her easy humor and genuine kindness. She told them about the regular customers, giving them silly backstories that were obviously made up but entirely entertaining. She asked Viktor about his favorite books and movies, listening to his answers with real interest rather than the patronizing attention adults often gave children. And every time she looked at Quintus, something sparked between them, something electric and dangerous and entirely impossible. Finally, when the diner started to empty out and midnight approached, Quintus knew they needed to leave. "Time to go," he told Viktor. His son's face fell. "Already? It's late, but we don't sleep." "Viktor." There was gentle warning in Quintus's voice, and the boy subsided, though clearly disappointed. Harper appeared with their check, and Quintus left far more money than the coffee and cookies warranted. As they stood to leave, she caught his arm lightly, her warm fingers on his cold skin sending a shock through his system. "Come back sometime," she said. "Both of you. Viktor promised to tell me what happens in the next book I should read." "I did," Viktor agreed eagerly, looking up at his father with pleading eyes. Quintus knew he should say no, should make some excuse and never return to this place, never see this woman again. She was human, fragile, temporary. She was everything he couldn't have and shouldn't want. Getting close to her would only lead to pain for all of them. But his son was smiling at him with actual hope in his eyes, and the word that came out of his mouth was, "Perhaps?" Harper's answering smile was radiant. "I work most nights, just so you know." Outside, in the cool night air, Viktor slipped his small hand into Quintus's larger one. "I like her," the boy said simply. "I noticed." "Do you like her?" Quintus looked down at his son, at the first real happiness he'd seen on Viktor's face in years. "Yes," he admitted. "I believe I do." "Can we really come back?" Every instinct screamed at him to protect his son, to protect himself, to retreat back into their safe, controlled world, where nothing unexpected could hurt them. But he remembered Viktor's laugh, bright and free and beautiful, and he knew he couldn't take that away. "Yes," Quintus said, "we can come back." Over the following weeks, they returned to Honey's diner 3 times a week, always when Harper was working. Quintus told himself it was for Viktor, who blossomed under Harper's attention, becoming more animated and joyful with each visit. But he knew he was lying to himself. He came for her too, for the way she made him feel almost human again, almost capable of something beyond vengeance and duty. Harper recommended books to Viktor, and the boy devoured them, always ready to discuss plot twists and favorite characters during their visits. She learned that they couldn't eat regular food due to severe allergies, and started keeping special herbal tea on hand that Quintus could actually drink without discomfort. She asked about their lives, and Quintus found himself carefully editing the truth into something believable. He was a widower, old money, mostly retired, raising his son alone in the city. "That must be hard," Harper said one night when Viktor was in the bathroom and they had a moment alone. "Being a single parent." "I have help," Quintus said. "Money provides certain advantages. Maybe, but it can't buy the important stuff. The love, the time, the showing up." She refilled his tea, her movements graceful and efficient. "You're doing a good job, though. He's a great kid." "He's the best of me," Quintus said quietly. "The only good thing I've managed to create in a very long life." Harper studied his face, and he saw questions forming in her eyes. "How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" He should lie, should give her a number that made sense for his appearance. But something in her open, honest gaze made him want to give her truth, even if she couldn't fully understand it. "Very old," he said. "Much older than I look." "Good genes?" "Something like that." She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "You're mysterious, Quintus Rothwell, like something out of a Gothic novel. Would that appeal to you, if I were?" The flirtation had slipped out before he could stop it, and Harper's eyes widened slightly, color rising in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "Maybe," she said softly. "I always did like dangerous stories." "I'm quite dangerous," he said, his voice dropping lower. "You should be careful around me." "Should I?" Her pulse jumped in her throat, and he could hear her heartbeat accelerate. Fear, yes, but also excitement, interest, attraction. "Or should you be careful around me?" Before he could respond, Viktor returned, and the moment broke. But Quintus felt it settle into his chest, this awareness that something was building between them, something inevitable and terrifying and utterly wrong. Harper Donovan was human. She was mortal. She would age and die while he remained frozen in time. And more than that, his world was dangerous, full of ancient politics and blood feuds and creatures who would see her as nothing more than prey or a weakness to exploit. He should stop coming to the diner, should protect her from himself. But he couldn't. Because when he was near her, he remembered what it felt like to be alive rather than simply existing. And Viktor needed her, needed the normalcy and warmth she provided, the connection to the human world he'd been torn from too soon. So Quintus kept returning, kept sitting in that corner booth, kept letting himself fall slowly and inexorably into something that could only end in heartbreak. The fourth week, Harper asked if they'd like to stay after closing. "I make a mean milkshake after hours," she said. "Well, Viktor can't have dairy, but I could make him something special, and we could talk without me having to run around serving everyone." "I'd like that," Viktor said immediately, looking at his father with pleading eyes. Quintus knew he should refuse. Spending more time with her in the intimacy of an empty diner would only make the inevitable goodbye harder. But he found himself nodding, and Harper's smile was worth any future pain. They waited in the booth while she cleaned up, wiping down tables and stacking chairs, humming along to the oldies station playing quietly from the kitchen. Other staff filtered out, calling goodbyes to Harper, who waved them off with easy familiarity. Finally, it was just the three of them and the night manager counting the register in the back office. Harper locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed, then turned to them with a grin. "Okay, gentlemen, let me work my magic." She disappeared into the kitchen, and Viktor moved to sit beside his father, close enough that Quintus could put an arm around him. "I really like her," the boy whispered. "I know. Do you think she likes us?" "I think she must to invite us to stay." "Good." Viktor leaned against his father's side, something he rarely did anymore. "I'm glad we came out that night. I'm glad we found her." Quintus pressed a kiss to the top of his son's head. "So am I." Harper emerged carrying a tray laden with glasses. She'd made Viktor something with fresh fruit and ice that wasn't quite a smoothie but looked delicious, and for Quintus, a simple drink of pomegranate juice that wouldn't offend his vampire digestion. For herself, an enormous milkshake topped with whipped cream and a cherry. "So," she said, sliding into the booth across from them, "tell me something real about yourselves, something nobody else knows." Viktor looked at his father, uncertainty in his eyes. They couldn't tell her the truth, but the request for honesty touched something in both of them. "I'll go first," Harper said when they hesitated. "Something nobody knows about me. I'm scared all the time. Scared I'm wasting my life working in a diner. Scared I'll never write the book I keep telling myself I'm going to write. Scared I'll wake up at 50 and realize I never really lived. But I smile anyway, because what else can you do?" The confession was so raw, so honest, that Quintus felt something in his chest tighten. "You're a writer?" he asked. "Wannabe writer. I've got about 6 novels started and 0 finished. Turns out having dreams is easier than actually pursuing them." "What stops you?" Viktor asked. "Fear, mostly. Fear that I'm not good enough, that I'll fail, that I'll put my heart into something and have it rejected." She took a sip of her milkshake. "Stupid, right?" "Not stupid," Quintus said firmly. "Fear is the most human of emotions. But you should write your stories, Harper. The world needs them." "How do you know? You haven't read any of them." "I know because you tell stories with your whole heart. I've watched you with Viktor, with your customers. You make everything brighter just by being in the room. That's a gift, and it should be shared." Harper stared at him, her green eyes shining with unshed tears. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "It's simply the truth." She cleared her throat, clearly moved. "Okay, your turn. Something real." Quintus considered carefully. "I've forgotten how to be happy," he said finally. "I lost someone very important to me, and I've been lost ever since. Until recently, I wasn't certain I would ever find my way back." "And now?" Harper asked softly. "Now I have hope." He looked at her steadily, letting her see the truth in his eyes. "Because of you." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken feelings and impossible possibilities. Harper's heartbeat was rapid, her breathing shallow, and Quintus could smell the subtle chemistry of attraction flooding her system. "Quintus," she whispered, and his ancient name in her modern voice was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Viktor, perceptive as always, suddenly announced, "I need to use the bathroom." As soon as the boy was gone, Harper reached across the table and took Quintus's hand. Her skin was warm against his cold palm, alive in a way he would never be again. "I don't understand what's happening here," she said. "But I feel it. Whatever this is between us. Tell me you feel it too." "I do," Quintus said, his voice rough with emotion. "But Harper, I'm not who you think I am. There are things about me, about my life, that you couldn't possibly understand. So explain them to me." "I can't. Can't or won't?" He looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between her vitality and his death-pale skin. "Both? Neither. Harper, getting close to me would be dangerous for you." "I'm a grown woman, Quintus. I can decide what risks I want to take." "Not if you don't understand what you're risking." She squeezed his hand. "Then tell me. Trust me enough to tell me the truth." He wanted to. God, how he wanted to. But vampire law was absolute. Humans who learned of their existence had to be turned or killed. There were no other options. He could never put Harper in that position, could never force her to choose between becoming a monster or dying. "I can't," he said again, and pulled his hand away. "I'm sorry." The hurt in her eyes nearly broke him, but before either of them could say anything else, Viktor returned. The boy looked between them, clearly sensing the tension, and his small face fell. "It's late," Quintus said, standing abruptly. "We should go." "Quintus, wait," Harper started. "Thank you for your hospitality, Miss Donovan." His voice was cold now, formal, every inch the vampire king rather than the man who had been holding her hand moments before. "We won't trouble you again." "You're not trouble," she said desperately. "Please don't do this. Don't run away because you're scared." "I'm not scared," he lied. "I'm simply being realistic. This, whatever you think this is, it cannot happen. Come, Viktor." His son followed reluctantly, casting miserable looks back at Harper, who stood frozen by the table, her eyes bright with tears. They made it halfway to the door before Quintus heard her voice, soft but clear. "I'll be here. When you're ready to stop running, I'll be here." He didn't look back. Couldn't look back. If he did, he would break, would go to her, and damn the consequences. So he walked out into the night with his son, leaving the light and warmth of the diner behind. The ride home was silent. Viktor stared out the window of their car, his expression devastated, and Quintus hated himself for putting that look on his son's face. "Why can't we see her anymore?" Viktor finally asked as they entered their building. "Because it's not safe." "She's not dangerous." "I am," Quintus said quietly. "I'm dangerous, and my world is dangerous, and I won't risk bringing her into it." "But father—" "Enough, Viktor!" The command was sharp, final, and the boy flinched. Quintus immediately regretted his tone, but the words were already out, the damage done. In the penthouse, Viktor went straight to his room without saying goodnight. Quintus stood alone in his living room, surrounded by priceless art and luxurious furniture and everything money could buy, and felt the emptiness swallow him whole once again. Cassius appeared from the shadows, his expression carefully neutral. "There's been talk, Your Majesty." "There's always talk. About you and a human woman, about regular visits to a common diner. The council is concerned." Of course they were. The council was always concerned about something. Tell the council to mind their own affairs. "With respect, sire, your affairs are their affairs. You're the king. Your actions impact all of us." Quintus turned to face his oldest advisor, letting his eyes flash red with warning. "Are you questioning my judgment, Cassius?" "I'm questioning your heart," Cassius said boldly. "You've been alone for 3 centuries. Perhaps it's time to consider taking another vampire as your mate, someone appropriate, someone who could stand beside you as queen and give Viktor a mother again." "Viktor had a mother. She's dead. No one will replace her." "Then what is this human to you? A distraction? A meal you're playing with?" The suggestion made Quintus's rage spike dangerously. "You will never speak of her that way again. Do you understand me?" Cassius's eyes widened. "You care for her. Truly care for her." "It doesn't matter. I've ended it." "Then why do you look like you've ripped your own heart out?" Quintus had no answer for that. He dismissed Cassius with a wave and retreated to his own chambers, where he stood at the window watching the city until dawn forced him inside, away from the deadly sunlight. Days passed. Then weeks. Viktor became withdrawn again, all the progress they'd made evaporating like morning dew. He went through his lessons mechanically, answered questions in monosyllables, and stopped reading the books Harper had recommended. Quintus buried himself in vampire politics, settling disputes and making decisions with ruthless efficiency. But every night, around 11, he found himself thinking about the diner, about warm yellow lights and the smell of coffee and a woman whose smile could light up the darkness. He was miserable. Viktor was miserable, and Quintus began to wonder if protecting Harper from his world was worth destroying what little happiness they'd managed to find. The answer came in the form of a crisis. Viktor disappeared. Quintus had been in a council meeting when one of the servants burst in, panic evident in every line of his body. "Your Majesty, the young prince is gone. We've searched everywhere. He's not in the building." Everything else ceased to matter. Quintus was on his feet instantly, his power flooding outward in a wave that made every vampire in the room drop to their knees in submission. "When?" he demanded. "Within the last hour. We think he climbed out a window." An hour. Viktor had been gone for an hour, alone in a city full of threats. He was strong for his age, but he was still a child, still vulnerable. There were hunters out there, human authorities who asked questions, and other vampires who might see the young prince as a target to strike at the king. Quintus reached out with his senses, searching for his son's unique presence. Vampires who shared blood could feel each other over distance, and Viktor was his child in every way that mattered. There a faint pull toward the east, toward the warehouse district, toward the diner. Of course, Viktor had run to the one place that felt safe, to the one person who had made him feel happy. Quintus moved faster than human eyes could follow, a white blur through the city streets. Other vampires scattered from his path, recognizing their king's fury. He reached the diner in minutes and found Viktor standing outside, staring through the window at Harper, who was serving customers with her usual warmth. "Viktor," Quintus said, and his son spun around, guilt written across his face. "I'm sorry, Father. I know you said we couldn't come back, but I missed her. I just wanted to see her one more time." Quintus knelt down, pulling his son into a fierce embrace. "Don't ever frighten me like that again. Do you understand? You could have been hurt, taken, killed. I was careful. You're 8 years old. Careful isn't enough." Quintus pulled back, looking into Viktor's eyes. "Why did you run?" "Because you're sad again. Because I'm sad. Because we were happy here, and now we're not, and I don't understand why we have to stay away just because you're scared." "I'm not." Quintus stopped, realizing the lie for what it was. "You're right. I am scared." "Of what?" "Of losing someone else I love, of bringing pain to someone who deserves only joy, of being selfish enough to want something I have no right to want." Viktor's expression was far too wise for his young face. "But what if she wants it too? What if she'd rather be with us, even knowing the risks, than be safe and alone?" "That's not a choice I can ask her to make." "Why not? Don't grown-ups get to make their own choices?" Before Quintus could answer, the diner door opened and Harper stepped out. She froze when she saw them, her eyes going wide. "Viktor?" she said. "Quintus? What are you doing here?" Viktor pulled away from his father and ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I missed you," he said, his voice muffled against her apron. "I'm sorry we left. Please don't hate us." Harper's arms came around him automatically, her expression softening. "Oh, sweetheart, I could never hate you. Never." She looked over his head at Quintus, and the longing in her eyes matched what he felt in his chest. "Either of you." Quintus stood slowly, every instinct warring within him. Protect her by leaving, protect his son by staying, protect his heart by running, open his heart by trusting. "Harper," he said, her name a prayer and a plea. "We need to talk." She nodded, called something to the other waitress inside, and led them to a bench outside the diner. Viktor sat between them, holding both their hands, clearly hoping his presence would keep them from fighting. "You were right," Quintus said quietly. "I was running because I was scared, because caring for you, letting myself feel something for you, it terrifies me in a way that 300 years of existence never has." Harper's eyes widened. 300 years? He'd said too much already. Might as well continue. "I can't explain everything here now. But if you're willing, if you truly want to understand what Viktor and I are, what being part of our lives would mean, then come with us. Let me show you the truth." "Quintus, you're scaring me a little." "I know, and I'm sorry. But this is your choice, Harper. Walk away now, tonight, and I promise we'll never trouble you again. Or come with us, learn our secrets, and accept that once you know, there's no going back to ignorance." She looked down at Viktor, who stared up at her with desperate hope, then back at Quintus, studying his face like she was trying to read his soul. "Will you hurt me?" she asked. "Never." "Will Viktor?" "Never," the boy echoed. "Then I choose to know. Whatever you are, whatever this is, I choose to understand." Quintus felt relief and terror in equal measure. "Then come with us." The drive back to the penthouse was surreal. Harper sat in the back of the car with Viktor, listening as the boy chattered nervously about his room and his books and everything else he wanted to show her. Quintus caught her gaze in the rearview mirror several times, saw the questions and slight fear there, but also the determination. She was brave, his Harper, braver than she knew. At the building, the doorman's eyes widened at seeing Quintus with a human woman, but he was too well trained to comment. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence, the tension building with each passing second. Inside the penthouse, Harper looked around with wide eyes, taking in the obvious wealth and luxury. "This is where you live?" "Yes." "It's beautiful, like a museum." "It's a cage," Quintus said quietly. "A gilded one, but a cage nonetheless." He led her to the living room, guided her to sit on the leather sofa. Viktor curled up beside her, and Quintus remained standing, trying to figure out how to explain the impossible. "What I'm about to tell you will sound insane," he began, "but I need you to listen with an open mind. Can you do that?" "I'll try." He took an unnecessary breath. Viktor and I are vampires. Silence. Harper stared at him, clearly waiting for the punchline. When none came, she laughed uncertainly. Okay, that's a good one. You almost had me going. It's not a joke, Harper. Vampires aren't real. They're folklore, stories, gothic novels. We're very real. And we've been living alongside humanity since the beginning of civilization, hiding in plain sight. Harper looked at Viktor, then back at Quintus. If this is some weird role-playing thing. Quintus let his eyes change, the irises bleeding to crimson as his fangs extended. At the same time, he allowed his true nature to show, the predatory grace and otherworldly beauty that vampires normally suppressed around humans. Harper gasped, pressing back into the sofa. What the hell? We're vampires, Quintus repeated gently. Ancient, immortal, and dependent on blood to survive. I'm over 300 years old. Viktor was turned when he was 6 to save his life from the fire that killed his mother. This is insane. I'm hallucinating. Someone drugged me. You're not. This is real, Harper. We're real. Quintus retracted his fangs, let his eyes return to their normal pale blue. I'm sorry to frighten you, but you asked for the truth. Harper stood up abruptly, pacing the room. Vampires. You're telling me vampires are real? That you drink blood and what? Turn into bats? Sleep in coffins? Neither of those things, actually. We sleep in beds like anyone else. And shapeshifting is a different species entirely. There are other species? This world is far stranger than most humans realize. Harper pressed her hands to her temples. I need a minute. I need to think. Viktor slipped off the couch and approached her carefully. Please don't be scared. We won't hurt you. We really won't. She looked down at him, this 8-year-old boy with white hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering, and Quintus watched her expression shift. The fear was still there, but it was being overwhelmed by compassion. You're really a vampire? She asked Viktor. You really drink blood? Yes, but I don't like it very much. It's like medicine. You take it because you have to. And your mother? She really died in a fire? Viktor nodded, tears filling his eyes. The hunters came while she was sleeping. They set the whole house on fire. Mother got me out, but she went back for father, and the sun was rising and she couldn't get to shelter in time. The fire and the sun together, they killed her. Oh, sweetheart. Harper pulled him into a hug, and Viktor buried his face against her shoulder. I'm so sorry. No one should have to lose their mother like that. Over his son's head, Harper looked at Quintus with new understanding. That's why you're so protective, why you said you were dangerous. There are people who hunt us, organizations dedicated to destroying our kind. Being near me, near Viktor, it puts a target on your back. And that's what you were trying to protect me from. Yes. Harper held Viktor for a long moment, processing everything. Then she set the boy gently aside and walked to Quintus, looking up at him with those extraordinary green eyes. You should have told me sooner, she said. You should have trusted me to make my own choice. I was afraid. Of what? That I'd run screaming? That I'd reject you? Both. Neither. I was afraid that you'd be brave enough to stay, and I'd end up destroying you like I couldn't protect my wife. You didn't destroy her. Hunters did. I should have been there. Should have protected her better. Harper reached up and cupped his face, her warm palm against his cold cheek. You can't protect everyone from everything, Quintus. Not even a 300-year-old vampire king is that powerful. The touch, the understanding, the acceptance, it was too much. Quintus felt something break inside him, all the grief and guilt and loneliness he'd been carrying for centuries, finally finding release. He pulled Harper against him, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. I care for you, he whispered against her hair, far more than is wise or safe. You've brought light back into my life, into Viktor's life, and I don't know how to let that go. Then don't, she whispered back. Let me stay. Let me be part of this, whatever this is. You don't know what you're asking. Then show me, teach me, help me understand your world. Quintus pulled back enough to look into her eyes. If you stay, if you become part of our lives, the Vampire Council will know about you. They'll see you as a liability, a human who knows too much. The law says you either have to be turned or killed. Harper paled. Those are my only options? Unless I can convince them you're under my protection and bound by my authority. But even then, there will be those who see you as a weakness to exploit, a way to strike at me. And if I'm turned? If I become like you? You'd be immortal, powerful, you'd never age, never die of natural causes. But you'd also have to drink blood to survive, would burn in sunlight, and would lose your connection to the human world you know. Harper looked at Viktor, who was watching them anxiously. Would I still be me? Yes, Quintus said. Vampires retain their personalities, their memories, their core selves. You'd be you, just different. She nodded slowly, thinking through the implications. Quintus forced himself to wait, to let her process, even though every instinct screamed at him to influence her decision, to push her toward staying. I need time, Harper finally said. This is huge, life-changing. I can't decide right now. Disappointment cut through him, but he nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. But I'm not running away, she added quickly. I'm not disappearing. I just need to think, to really consider what this would mean. I understand. Can I still see you? Both of you? While I'm thinking? You want to? Of course I do. She smiled, tentative but genuine. Finding out you're vampires doesn't change how I feel about you. It just means I have more to learn. Viktor practically launched himself at her again, wrapping his arms around her waist. Thank you, he said fervently. Thank you for not leaving. I'm not going anywhere, sweetie. I promise. Over the next few weeks, Harper became part of their nightly routine. She'd finish her shift at the diner and come to the penthouse, where Quintus taught her about vampire history and culture. She learned about the different bloodlines, the ancient feuds, the delicate politics that kept their society functioning. She met Cassius and other members of the household, all of whom were deeply suspicious of this human woman who had captured their king's attention. But Harper won them over slowly, with her genuine interest and fearless questions and the way she made Viktor laugh. The boy flourished under her attention, becoming more like a normal child every day. He played games with her, showed her his favorite books, asked her opinion on everything from his lessons to what they should do on their nights together. And Quintus fell deeper in love with every passing hour. He watched Harper curl up on the sofa with Viktor, reading him stories in different voices that made the boy giggle. He listened to her passionate debates with Cassius about vampire law and whether certain traditions needed updating for the modern world. He felt his cold, dead heart warm every time she smiled at him, touched his hand, said his name with that particular softness that meant she cared. One night, about a month after the revelation, Harper asked to see his fangs again. They were alone in his study, Viktor already asleep in his room. Harper sat across from him in a leather chair, her legs curled under her, looking entirely too comfortable in a vampire king's private sanctuary. Why? Quintus asked. Because I've been thinking about what being turned would mean, about what I'd become, and I need to understand all of it, not just the abstract concept. Quintus hesitated, then let the change come over him. His eyes shifted to red, his fangs extended, and he let her see the predator beneath the civilized exterior. Harper stood and crossed to him, studying his face with scientific curiosity rather than fear. Can I touch them? Harper, please, I need to understand. He nodded and she reached up, gently running her finger along the edge of one fang. The touch sent electricity through his system and his eyes flared brighter. Sharp, she observed. And you use these to drink blood? Yes. We bite here. He touched the side of her neck gently, where the blood flows close to the surface. For vampires, it's intimate, sacred. We don't feed from just anyone. Have you ever fed from a human you cared about? While they were alive, I mean. Once, my wife, before I turned her. What was it like? Ecstasy. Agony. The most intimate connection two beings can share. When a vampire feeds from someone they love, they can feel their emotions, their thoughts, their very soul. Harper's pulse was racing, her pupils dilated. Would you ever feed from me? The question sent heat flooding through him. Harper, I'm not saying I've decided anything. I'm just asking. If I stayed human under your protection, would you ever want to feed from me? Want to? Yes. Would I? That's far more complicated. Why? Because once I tasted you, truly tasted you, I'm not certain I'd be able to stop at just feeding. I'd want all of you, every drop, every beat of your heart, every breath, every thought. It would be the most intense addiction imaginable. Harper swallowed hard. That sounds dangerous. It is, which is why vampires in relationships with humans they love usually turn them sooner rather than later. It's safer for everyone involved. And if I chose to be turned, if I decided I wanted to be like you? Quintus retracted his fangs, let his eyes return to normal. Then I would do it myself. I would be the one to give you immortality, to bind you to me for eternity, to make you my queen in truth and not just in my heart. Your queen. Harper's voice was barely a whisper. You think I would turn you and let you be anything less? You think I could spend centuries with you and not want you by my side, ruling our people, shaping our world? He cupped her face gently. Harper, if you choose this life, you choose all of it. You choose me, choose Viktor, choose the responsibility and danger and immortality. There's no halfway. I know. She leaned into his touch. That's why it's taking me so long to decide. This isn't just about us. It's about giving up everything I've ever known, everyone I've ever loved in the human world. You have family? A sister in Oregon. We're not close, but she's still my sister. And friends from high school I don't see much anymore. And the customers at the diner who I've known for years. She smiled sadly. It's not much of a life by some standards, but it's mine. Giving it up feels huge. It is huge, and I won't pretend otherwise. Would I have to fake my death? Most likely, it's cleaner that way. Prevents questions. Harper nodded, processing this. And there's no going back, no cure, no way to become human again? None that I know of. This would be permanent, Harper. Forever. Forever is a long time. Yes. He searched her eyes, trying to read her thoughts. Are you leaning toward a decision? I think so, but I need a little more time. Is that okay? Take all the time you need. This is your choice, and I'll respect whatever you decide. Harper stood on her toes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Thank you for being patient with me. After she left that night, Quintus stood at his window and wondered what he would do if she chose to walk away. How would he return to the cold, empty existence he'd known before her? How would he explain it to Viktor, who had already lost one mother and would be devastated to lose the woman who had become a mother figure to him? But he also knew he couldn't force her decision. Harper deserved the chance to choose her own fate, even if that fate didn't include him. The answer came 2 weeks later, in the worst possible way. Quintus was in a council meeting when Cassius burst in, his face ashen with fear. Your Majesty, there's been an attack. The diner. Hunters. Everything inside Quintus went cold and deadly. Harper? We don't know. Emergency services are on scene. There are casualties. Quintus was moving before Cassius finished speaking, faster than he'd ever moved in his long existence. Behind him, he heard Viktor scream his name, but he couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. If Harper was hurt, if she was dying, he reached the diner in minutes and found it surrounded by police cars and ambulances. The windows were blown out and smoke still rose from inside. Bodies were being carried out on stretchers, and Quintus used his supernatural senses to search for Harper's heartbeat among the chaos. There, weak, thready, but still beating. She was alive. He found her being loaded into an ambulance, her body burned and broken, blood everywhere. One of the paramedics was saying something about internal injuries, blood loss, trauma to the head. Quintus grabbed the man's arm with crushing force. Where are you taking her? Sir, you need to step back. Where? The paramedic rattled off a hospital name, and Quintus released him. He couldn't go to the hospital, couldn't be in that environment full of witnesses and questions and fluorescent lights. But he also couldn't let Harper die. He pulled out his phone and called Cassius. Bring me Turning Blood. Meet me at Mercy General Hospital, the trauma entrance, and bring Viktor. Your Majesty, in public, in front of humans. Now, Cassius? She's dying. He followed the ambulance, staying just out of sight, and met Cassius in the hospital parking garage. His advisor had brought a vial of Quintus's own blood, the most potent kind, capable of turning even someone on the brink of death. The boy's in the car, Cassius said quietly. He's terrified. Stay with him. I'll be back. Quintus used his power to cloud the minds of the hospital staff, making them see what he wanted them to see as he followed Harper's gurney into surgery. The doctors were already working on her, their voices urgent as they tried to stabilize her failing body. She was dying. Quintus could see it, could smell the death approaching in her blood. The hunters had done their job well, destroying the diner and everyone in it just to send him a message. We know about the human woman you care for, and we can reach her whenever we want. Rage filled him, but he pushed it aside. There would be time for vengeance later. Right now, Harper needed him. He stepped out of the shadows, dropping the glamour, and the doctors gasped at his sudden appearance. Before they could react, he was at Harper's side, pushing them away with casual force that sent them stumbling. "What are you doing?" one of them shouted. "She needs surgery." "She needs something you cannot give her," Quintus said, and uncapped the vial of blood. Harper's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with pain. "Quintus?" Her voice was barely audible. "I'm here, my love. I'm here." "Hurts. I know, but I can make it stop. I can save you, Harper, but only if you choose it. You have to choose." "Choose what?" She coughed, and blood flecked her lips. "To become like me. To let me turn you. It's the only way to save your life." Understanding dawned in her eyes, even through the pain. "Forever? Forever. With you? And Viktor?" "Yes. Always." Harper managed a tiny smile. "Took the choice out of my hands, didn't it? The universe, I mean. You can still refuse. You can let go, find peace. I won't force this on you. And leave you? Leave Viktor? No way." She reached up with a trembling, burned hand and touched his face. "Turn me, Quintus. Make me yours." Relief and love and terror flooded through him. He lifted her head gently, supported her as he brought the vial to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "All of it." Harper drank, choking slightly on the thick coppery liquid, but she got it all down. Quintus felt the moment his blood entered her system, felt the ancient magic begin to work, rewriting her DNA, transforming her from human to vampire. The process was agonizing. Harper screamed, her body convulsing as every cell changed, as she died and was reborn into something new. Quintus held her through it, murmuring words of comfort and love, promising her it would be worth it, that she would survive. Behind him, the doctors were calling for security, but Quintus sent out a wave of compulsion that froze them all in place. They would remember nothing of this once he was gone. It took hours, the longest hours of Quintus's existence, watching the woman he loved suffer through the transformation. But finally, Harper's heartbeat slowed, then stopped, then restarted in the slower rhythm of a vampire. Her eyes opened, and they were red as blood, gleaming with new power. "Quintus," she whispered, and her voice was different now, richer, carrying the weight of immortality. "Welcome to eternity, my love." He gathered her into his arms, her burned and broken body already beginning to heal with supernatural speed. She clung to him, overwhelmed by the changes, by the new senses flooding her consciousness. "I can hear everything," she whispered, "heartbeats, breathing, blood moving through veins." "I know. It will be overwhelming at first, but you'll learn to control it." "I'm thirsty. So thirsty." "That's the hunger. We'll feed you properly once we're somewhere safe." Quintus carried her out of the hospital, leaving the compelled doctors frozen in place. He would send someone to clean up the scene later to ensure no awkward questions were asked. Right now, he needed to get Harper home. In the car, Viktor stared at Harper with wide eyes. "She's like us now." "Yes," Quintus said. "She's vampire, she's family." Viktor launched himself at Harper, hugging her carefully. "You stayed. You really stayed." "I promised I wouldn't leave you," Harper said, holding the boy close. "I keep my promises." Back at the penthouse, Quintus sent everyone away and focused on Harper. She was newly turned, which meant she was dangerous, unpredictable, driven by hungers she didn't yet understand how to control. But she was also still herself, still the brave, kind woman he'd fallen in love with. "The hunger is really bad," she said, pacing the room with restless energy. "It's like I'm starving and burning and freezing all at once." "I know. Here." Quintus provided a crystal glass filled with blood, carefully sourced from their ethical suppliers. Vampires in the modern world didn't need to kill to feed, not when they had resources and money and systems in place. Harper drank desperately, and Quintus watched her fangs extend for the first time, watched her eyes glow brighter as the blood hit her system. She was magnificent, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. When the glass was empty, she looked at him with wonder. That was incredible. It gets easier, less desperate, but the first days are the hardest. Will I want to kill people? You'll want to, but you won't. I'll teach you control, teach you how to exist in this world without becoming a monster. Harper set down the glass and crossed to him, moving with the supernatural grace of her new nature. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving me, for giving me this choice, even when I was dying." "I couldn't lose you," Quintus said simply. "I've lost too much already. I couldn't lose you too." "You won't. I'm here. Forever, remember?" "Forever," he echoed, and pulled her into a kiss that was 300 years of loneliness, finally finding its end. The kiss was different now that she was vampire, more intense, more perfect. Quintus could feel her power rising to meet his, could sense the bond forming between them, the ancient magic that connected sired vampires to their makers. She was his in a way that went beyond love, beyond choice. She was his creation, his responsibility, his mate. When they finally pulled apart, Harper was glowing with happiness despite everything she'd been through. So what happens now? "Now I hunt down every hunter who was involved in the attack and make them pay for what they did." Harper's expression turned serious. "They killed everyone in the diner, didn't they? All my co-workers, all those innocent people." "Yes." Tears filled her red eyes. "Why? Just to get to me? To get to you?" Hunters see all vampires as evil. They don't care about collateral damage, about innocent lives lost. They only care about destroying us. "Then destroy them first," Harper said, and there was steel in her voice. "Make them pay for what they did." Quintus saw the rage in her eyes, the thirst for vengeance that all young vampires felt intensely. "We will," he promised, "but carefully, strategically. We're not monsters. Harper, we don't kill indiscriminately." "They do." "Yes. Which is why we must be better." It took 3 days to track down the hunters responsible for the attack, 3 days during which Quintus taught Harper to control her new abilities, to feed without killing, to move through the world with the grace and power of her new nature. Viktor stayed by her side constantly, delighted to have someone who truly understood what he was, who could play with him at full strength without fear of breaking. And Harper flourished. She took to vampire life with remarkable ease, asking endless questions, pushing her new abilities to their limits, learning everything Quintus could teach her. She was brilliant and fierce and absolutely perfect. On the third night, Quintus's spies reported that they'd located the hunter cell responsible for the attack. A group of 15 holed up in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, celebrating their successful strike against the Vampire King. "I'm coming with you," Harper said when Quintus prepared to leave. "Absolutely not. You're too newly turned, too unpredictable. They killed my friends, Quintus, people I cared about. I deserve to be there." "Harper, I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm coming." Her eyes flashed red with determination. "You made me a vampire. You made me powerful. Now let me use that power." Quintus looked at this magnificent creature he'd created, this woman who had been brave enough to love him even knowing what he was, and felt pride swell in his chest. "Very well. But you stay by my side. You follow my lead. Understood?" "Understood." They left Viktor with Cassius and made their way to the warehouse. Quintus brought a small force of his most trusted vampires, enough to ensure complete dominance, but not so many that it became a massacre. He wanted the hunters to understand that they had made a grave mistake, but he also wanted some of them to survive, to carry the message back to their organization. The Vampire King's mate was off limits. The fight was brutal but brief. Hunters were trained to kill vampires, but they were still human, still slow and fragile compared to immortal predators. Quintus moved through them like death itself, cold and precise and absolutely merciless. He made sure they understood exactly why they were dying, made sure they knew that touching Harper had sealed their fate. Harper fought beside him, her new vampire strength and speed making her deadly despite her inexperience. She killed 3 hunters herself, and Quintus saw no hesitation in her, no remorse. They had murdered innocent people just to hurt her, and she made them pay for that. When it was over, and the warehouse was painted red with hunter blood, Quintus stood in the center of the carnage and addressed the 5 hunters he'd allowed to survive. "Tell your leaders what happened here tonight," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Tell them that Harper Donovan is under my protection, that she is my mate and future queen. Tell them that anyone who touches her, anyone who even thinks about touching her, will suffer the same fate as your companions here. Tell them that the Vampire King has claimed his queen, and we will burn down anyone who threatens our family. Do you understand?" The hunters nodded frantically, terror written across their faces. "Good. Now run." They ran, stumbling over each other in their desperation to escape. Quintus let them go and turned to Harper, who was standing among the bodies with blood on her hands and fire in her eyes. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Powerful," she said. "And glad they're dead. Does that make me a monster?" "No. It makes you someone who understands that some things are worth protecting, even if it means becoming ruthless." He pulled her close, not caring about the blood. "You're my queen, Harper, my mate, my love, my equal. And together, we'll make this world safer for our family." "Our family," Harper repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." They returned home to find Viktor waiting anxiously with Cassius. The boy ran to them immediately, and Harper scooped him up despite the blood, holding him close. "Is it over?" Viktor asked. "Are the bad people gone?" "They're gone," Harper confirmed. "And they won't ever hurt us again." "Good." Viktor hugged her tighter. "I was scared. I thought they might hurt you like they hurt my mother." "They won't. Your father made sure of that. And I'm a vampire now, remember? I'm much harder to kill." Viktor pulled back to look at her seriously. "Does this mean you'll be my mother? For real?" Harper's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at Quintus for guidance. He nodded, giving her permission to answer however she wanted. "If you want me to be," Harper said softly. "I could never replace your real mother, Viktor. But I can love you like she did. I can be here for you, protect you, help you grow up. I can be your mother in all the ways that matter. If you'll have me." "I want that," Viktor said, his own eyes wet. "I want it so much." "Then it's settled." Harper looked at Quintus. "We're a family now, all 3 of us." 3 months later, Quintus called the Vampire Council together for a formal announcement. He stood before the assembled nobles and elders with Harper by his side, resplendent in a gown of midnight blue that made her pale vampire beauty even more striking. "I present to you Harper Donovan Rothwell, my mate and your queen," Quintus declared, his voice carrying through the great hall. "She has been turned, tested in battle, and proven herself worthy. Any who challenge her position, challenge me directly." There was silence as the council absorbed this. Then, one by one, they knelt in acknowledgement. Some did it gladly, others reluctantly, but all of them understood that the Vampire King had made his choice, and it was absolute. Harper handled the ceremony with grace and confidence, accepting their oaths of loyalty like she'd been born to rule. And perhaps, Quintus thought, she had been. She certainly took to her new role with remarkable ease, immediately involving herself in vampire politics, asking questions that made the council uncomfortable, pushing for reforms that would make their society stronger. That night, after the ceremony, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. Viktor was asleep inside, finally secure in the knowledge that his family was complete and safe. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Harper said, leaning against Quintus's shoulder. 3 months ago, I was a waitress in a diner, dreaming about maybe someday writing a book. Now, I'm an immortal vampire queen. Do you regret it?" "Not even for a second." She turned to look at him, her red eyes gleaming with love and certainty. "You and Viktor, you're everything I never knew I needed. You're my family, my purpose, my future. Forever." "Forever," Quintus agreed, and kissed her as the city sparkled below them like a sea of stars. He had not smiled in 300 years, not since the night his beloved queen had been slain. But he smiled now, with his new queen in his arms and his son sleeping safely nearby, and he knew that he would smile for the rest of eternity. Because Harper had done the impossible. She had made him believe in happiness again. She had made Viktor laugh, made Quintus love, made their broken family whole. And if that wasn't worth smiling about, nothing was. The Vampire King had found his joy again, and he would guard it fiercely for all the endless nights to come. Years passed, then decades. Viktor grew in wisdom and power, if not in physical age, becoming a fine young vampire prince under the guidance of his father and Harper. The three of them ruled together, a family bound by love and blood and immortality. Harper wrote her books, centuries worth of stories about love and loss and redemption that became beloved classics among both vampires and the few humans trusted with knowledge of their world. She never forgot where she came from, never lost her essential kindness and warmth, even as she grew into her power as queen. And Quintus loved her more with each passing year, grateful every night for the twist of fate that had brought her into their lives. She had saved him from an eternity of grief, had given Viktor a mother and himself a reason to truly live rather than simply exist. Together, they made their world better, safer, more just. They reformed vampire law, created systems to protect humans from careless predators, and built bridges between their kind and the mortal world. They were respected, feared, and loved in equal measure, but most importantly, they were happy. The widowed Vampire King had found love again in the arms of a waitress brave enough to accept his world and strong enough to thrive in it. And he smiled every single day for the rest of his endless existence, grateful for the night his son's laughter had led him back to life. Because in the end, love was the strongest magic of all, stronger than immortality, stronger than death, stronger than 300 years of grief and darkness. Love had saved them all, and they lived happily, truly, and completely forever after.